now that I have this off, what I like to do is kind of take a look at it before I go to take it apart, because if you don't have a manual, or even if you do, it's always good to check. Now what we have here is we have grease and oil that is outside this brake case that should not be here, period. And it's also leaked in here. But if you'll notice, when doing brakes, this is the brake arm. Now as the brake closes, you can watch. As I put pressure on this, you can watch the pads push apart. See? And what they do is they push apart on these sidewalls right here. You see? And when these pads push apart, they grab the sidewalls and slow the wheel down. But on these brakes, there's a spline shaft right here, and it has a little straight mark in it. Now what's more important is that on every one of these brake arms, there is you can't see it really well, but there is a little tiny dot right here. A little tiny dot. It's not dirt. This dot has to correspond with this mark in the spline shaft to know that you have got the brake arm on to the brake shaft in the right place. So in order to take this off, all I have to do is take off this little 6mm bolt nut and this off, and it'll pop right up. And then the spring will come with it. And then all I need to do is take a screwdriver, and it's called a horseshoe spring right here, and just pop this spring up off of this little stud, brake stud right here, and it'll come right off. And after that, the brake shoes will just fall off, and then I can continue to disassemble the front end and work on it. But what I have in here is, what the problem is, there should be no oil back in here at all. What's happened is this seal, little teeny seal, it's a very nice seal, but it's 26 damn years old. And I'll tell you what, it doesn't matter if it doesn't have any miles on it. They just wear out. And then on the bearings up here, we have a bearing on one side, and we have a bearing on the other, right here, underneath the seal. And I'm hoping that one of these bearings is, but it doesn't feel like it though, is in bad shape. That way, that's the reason that the wheel is wobbling, because I don't want a bent wheel. I'd rather have a broken bearing than a bent wheel. So that's where we are right now with the brakes. When we do our brakes, we want to go over and take a look here, and you'll see there should be no oil or anything on the outside of these brakes. Nothing. That's a bad seal. We also want to look up here, and you'll look, see these oil seals up here? And you'll see the little bit of spurge and crap on that. This has got a bad seal up here. And this one, if you look right here, this one has a bad seal. And that's all just due to, everything's in beautiful shape, but it's old. It's very, very old. So rubber parts do wear out. The Japanese make excellent products. Nobody can beat them on this. And if I don't find the parts I need on Bike Bandit, where I will go next, I will go onto eBay under Honda 50 Gyro. And a lot of times they'll sell some very good parts. They used to be reasonable. It used to be an auction site, but they don't auction anymore. It's just buy it now price. But you know, sometimes if you need a rare part, you just, it's like the Fram guy says, pay me now or pay me later. And I'm continuing to take pictures with my little Cool Links Nikon, that's what it is, of every phase, and they will go on my Photo Bucket account, which has all of my other motor pictures, 1,600 of them, or over 1100 or something like that. And if anyone wants to see that account, they can, and take a look at those pictures. A picture's worth 1,000 words, and if it helps anyone out there in the world, well, I hope it does. All right. Here we have the front brakes of the Gyro TG50 torn down. And what it consists of is our interior. It's not the drum, it's the brake assembly. Right here is the brake pin where the top brake parts mount here. Right in this hole right here goes the spreader, and its spline shaft is right here, and the end of its spline shaft goes onto the end of the arm, which pulls on the spreader. Now, one thing I want to say about this arm right here, if you look very, very closely at it, I put a black marker where the dot is, but it has splines all the way around except for one tiny little area. So if you miss the dot, it has a tiny gap in the spline shaft here, which will only go in one way. So that'll help you. Now, when you take apart your brakes, this little part is a little felt seal which goes on the other side of this. You don't want to lose that. And right down deep inside here, if you look, you'll see this white plastic piece, and you see the two little divots on the bottom and the top. Now, part of your wheel that spins, it has two corresponding nubs that fit in there. It spins that piece at the same rate as the wheel is going. Now, if you'll notice even closer, you'll see a gear shaft right down in here, and that corresponds to this speedometer cable. So the white piece spins the little gear inside the housing, and that little gear spins your brake or your cable for your speedometer cable, and gives you your speed. Now, the one thing about this nice little piece is it should have no oily marks, nothing on the outside of it. You can see the oil did not come from in here, which there's no way it could. The oil did not come from, I don't know where the oil came from there, but we can see the black oil, and that's all asbestos with oil, and we can see the seal. To pop the seal, and I'm not going to do it, but you just gently go around with a screwdriver and push up, and you'll pop the seal. Then what you want to do when we rebuild this is I'm going to sand all the area on here to get the glazing off. The glazing is that shiny stuff. And then I use what's called brake clean. This is what they use in brake shops, and I had when I was a young man, I did work in a brake shop. I learned a lot about brakes. I'd never do it, I'm not a brake guy, but what this brake clean does is it removes brake fluid, grease, and oil. Degreases instantly. Remember, grease is the enemy to these pads. And what it does is it gets down in here and it evaporates real quick, but it gets down in, lifts the grease to the top, and you just wipe it off. But you don't want to have any grease or anything on your pads. You might want to put a tiny dab on this one area right here, and maybe a tiny bit here where your movable parts are going to work, but nothing more than that. Because the hotter it gets, the more it gets, and you can still see some of the original grease down in there. So if you notice a leak or notice a problem with your bike, just go through and look and see what it's telling you. And then when you rebuild everything, rebuild it nice and clean. One reason is you won't catch any mistake. You'll catch any mistakes that you'll make if it's all clean. Secondly, if it starts to leak again or you have a problem again, then you can say, listen, it was virgin, cleaner than hell when I put it on there, so there's got to be another problem. That's why I want to keep everything clean and probably do a brake service once a year. But it's really simple to do if you just look at my videos. Okay. All right, we continue.